Every morning, millions of people over 60 wake up and do the same thing. They sit up. They reach for their phone. They scroll through the news. They pour a cup of coffee and settle into a chair. Maybe they watch television for a while. Maybe they just sit quietly, thinking about the day ahead. It feels peaceful. It feels earned. After a lifetime of early alarms and rushed mornings, a slow, quiet start to the day feels like a reward. But what if that peaceful habit was quietly putting your brain in danger? What if the very thing you thought was helping you ease into the day was actually setting the stage for one of the most devastating medical events a person can experience? That is exactly what a growing body of neurological and cardiovascular research is revealing. And if you are over 60, what I am about to share with you could be the most important thing you hear this year. Why mornings are the most dangerous time of day. Most people think of strokes as something that happens out of nowhere, a sudden collapse, a frightening emergency, something that arrives with no warning and no pattern. But the science tells a very different story. Strokes follow a clock. Research published in cardiovascular medicine journals has consistently shown that the early morning hours, roughly between 6 and 10 in the morning, carry a significantly higher stroke risk than any other time of day. Some studies estimate that strokes are nearly 50% more likely to occur in the first 3 hours after waking. That is not a coincidence, that is your biology sending you a message. Here is what is actually happening inside your body during those first morning hours. While you were sleeping, your body went without water for 7 or 8 hours. That means your blood is now at its thickest and stickiest. Thicker blood flows more slowly through your vessels and is far more prone to forming dangerous clots. At the same time, your body is releasing a surge of cortisol, the hormone responsible for alertness and stress response. This cortisol spike causes your blood pressure to climb rapidly from its overnight low. Your heart rate accelerates. Your blood vessels, already stiffened from hours of inactivity, are suddenly being asked to handle a sharp rise in pressure. And here is the part that most people never hear about. The tiny valves inside your leg veins, the ones responsible for pushing blood back up toward your heart and brain, have been largely inactive while you slept. Blood has naturally pooled in your lower limbs. Your cardiovascular system's job in those first waking minutes is to flush that pooled blood upward, reoxygenate the brain, and restore full circulation. That process requires movement. When you sit still, it cannot happen properly. And the longer you stay sedentary after waking, the more dangerous your vascular environment becomes. The habit nobody is warning you about. Most conversations about stroke prevention focus on the obvious: smoking, high blood pressure, poor diet, and lack of exercise. All of that matters, but there is one risk factor that almost never gets discussed, and it shows up in the morning routines of a vast number of seniors. It is called sedentary transition, and it simply means the period of prolonged stillness between waking up and actually moving your body. A study that tracked tens of thousands of adults over multiple years found that people who remained sedentary for an extended period in the first 90 minutes after waking faced a dramatically higher risk of stroke. This was independent of how much they exercised later in the day. Read that again. It did not matter how much they exercised at the gym. It did not matter how many steps they got in the afternoon. The damage done by that early morning stillness was its own separate risk factor. Why? Because of what is happening in your blood and your vessels during that specific window. Your calf muscles are what doctors sometimes call the second pump of the body. Every time those muscles contract, every time you walk, flex your foot, or even shift your weight, they squeeze the deep veins in your legs and force blood upward toward the heart. When you sit completely still, that pumping mechanism goes quiet, blood pools, circulation to the brain slows, and in a body already dealing with thick morning blood, rising pressure, and stiffened vessels, that stagnation creates exactly the kind of environment where a clot can form or an existing narrowing in a vessel can become a full blockage. This is the same reason doctors encourage patients to move their legs on long flights, the same reason hospitals get surgical patients up and walking as soon as medically possible after an operation. Sitting still for extended periods is a genuine vascular threat, and it is most dangerous first thing in the morning, when every other risk factor is already elevated. The signals your body sends before a stroke. One of the most important things to understand about strokes is that they rarely arrive without warning. The warning signs are often there days or even weeks in advance. The problem is that most people do not recognize them, or they recognize them and dismiss them as normal aging. The most widely known warning system uses the acronym FAST. F stands for facial drooping, one side of the face suddenly appearing uneven, especially when attempting to smile. A stands for arm weakness, difficulty raising both arms to the same height, or one arm drifting downward unexpectedly. S stands for speech difficulty, words coming out slurred, garbled, or simply not making sense. T stands for time. As in the moment you notice any of these signs, it is time to call emergency services immediately, not in an hour, not after a nap, immediately. But beyond FAST, There are subtler signals that often appear in the days before a major stroke, and they tend to show up most prominently in the morning. Sudden unexplained clumsiness, dropping things, misjudging distances or having your hands feel as though they are not quite responding correctly. A brief episode where a familiar word simply disappeared, not a name, but an ordinary everyday word, and then came back as though nothing happened. A moment of visual disturbance in one eye lasting only a few seconds. Dizziness upon standing that feels sharper or more disorienting than usual. These can all be signs of a transient ischemic attack, what doctors call a TIA or mini-stroke. A TIA does not cause permanent damage on its own, but research in neurological journals has shown that the risk of a full stroke is dramatically elevated in the 48 to 72 hours following a TIA. The window to intervene is real, that if you catch these signs and act on them, the outcome can be completely different. Do not rationalize them away, do not wait to see if they happen again. Treat any one of these symptoms as a medical emergency. The morning routine that protects your brain. Now here is the good news. Everything I have just described is preventable. The biology of the morning surge is real, but it can be countered, and it does not require medication, expensive equipment, or dramatic lifestyle changes. It requires awareness, and it requires a few simple shifts in the order and content of your first waking hour. The first shift is water before anything else. Your blood is at its thickest point when you wake up. The single fastest way to begin thinning it is to drink a full glass of water, room temperature or slightly warm, before coffee, before food, before your phone. Research in neurology journals has connected poor morning hydration to a significant percentage of first-time ischemic strokes. The fix costs nothing and it takes 30 seconds. Make it the first thing your body receives every morning. The second shift is move before you sit. Before you walk to the kitchen, before you lower yourself into a chair, give your body 2 minutes of deliberate movement. While still lying in bed, circle your ankles slowly in both directions, flex and point your toes 10 times. When you sit up, roll your shoulders backward. Then when you stand, march gently in place for 60 seconds, lifting each knee with intention, not momentum. This is not exercise. This is circulation. You are restarting the second pump, waking up the leg muscles and telling your vascular system that the day has begun. 2 minutes of this changes your entire cardiovascular baseline for the morning ahead. The third shift is protect the first 30 minutes from stress. The brain emerging from sleep is in a neurologically fragile state. Cortisol is already elevated, blood pressure is already rising. When you add psychological stress to that environment, breaking news, emotional emails, an argument, or even a frustrating social media post, you amplify every vascular risk factor simultaneously. Blood pressure spikes harder, cortisol climbs higher, vessels constrict tighter. Give yourself 30 minutes before you pick up your phone or turn on the news. Sit with your water, do your movement. Look out the window, let the brain stabilize before you load it with the weight of the world. This is not indulgence, this is neurological protection. The fourth shift is eat something small. After 60, the relationship between blood sugar and brain health changes significantly. The brain runs on glucose and does not store much of it. Going hours after waking without eating can push blood sugar low enough to cause dizziness and brain fog. And in vulnerable individuals it can contribute to a vascular event. You do not need a large breakfast. You need something small and protein forward. A hard-boiled egg, a small bowl of plain yogurt, a handful of soaked walnuts. Just enough to signal to your brain that fuel has arrived and the body is supported. The bigger picture. Here is what all of this comes down to. A stroke is not a lightning bolt from a clear sky. It is the result of a vascular environment that has been building for hours, days, or even weeks. And the morning hours, with their combination of thick blood, rising pressure, stiff vessels, and pooled circulation, are the moment when that environment is most dangerous. The habit of waking up and sitting still is not harmless. It is not lazy. It is simply uninformed. Most people who do it have never been told what is actually happening inside their bodies during those first quiet minutes. Now you know. The brain does not ask for perfection. It does not need you to overhaul your life. It does not need you to run a marathon at sunrise. It needs water. It needs 2 minutes of movement. It needs 30 minutes without a cortisol spike. It needs a small amount of food. These are not medical interventions, they are morning decisions, and they are available to you starting tomorrow. If you found this useful, share it with someone over 60 who you care about. The habits we keep in the first hour of the day shape the health of our brain for the rest of it. Take care of yourself. Your brain is worth the 2 minutes.